Hey, I hate to be that guy, but times really have changed. My children's mother offered our girls an allowance at an appropriate age. And when I was 10, I asked my dad if I could have an allowance. He goes, "Yeah, we'll allow you to live here."
That's an appropriate allowance.
That's an allowance.
We'll allow you to survive.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys, how was your 2 weeks? Because we had the 4th week off, right?
I know.
It was good.
Yeah.
I was happy to not see you.
Apologize to the fans. I know, right?
Right.
Yeah, we hate to skip, but the moons wouldn't align.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how many moons are there?
Depends on which. Are we talking just ours? Yeah, just our planet, or
apparently, if you ask that question to like scientists in the UK, they'll answer the answer changes every year.
Oh wow!
It's like 9, 10, 11 moons. There used to be 2, but it's definitely the definition of moon changes. Anyway, let's get to our first story. And this is, I don't know, Dwayne, how you got in the news so quickly over the 4th, but
he would never get caught.
Right?
Man arrested for evil twin, in quotes, Wi-Fi networks that swipe data during flights. Now, here's what we know. We know Dwayne is a hacker. We know he's a Wi-Fi guy. And we know that he, in fact, is an identical twin.
Right.
And he has a brother who is also an identical twin.
But here's what I say. Which one of us is the evil one?
Which one is identical?
Or is that a trick question? Maybe we're both the evil twin.
Yeah. All right. So what happened here?
So this is an interesting style of attack. We all use wireless now, right? Not a lot of people, even in your home. Like most of my devices are wired, but in most homes, especially if they were older homes and they weren't pre-wired, you're going to use wireless. So wireless is kind of ubiquitous, kind of everywhere. We've all been on flights where you jump on Southwest and there's the go-go Wi-Fi and you connect into it while you're in the air. And most of the time they actually give you free Wi-Fi now, where you can watch shows and do whatever while you're flying. So an attack on wireless is what's called, there's many attacks, DOF attacks, etc. But one of the attacks is called an evil twin attack. And what you do with an evil twin attack is you try and spin up an access point, a wireless access point, to have the same network name or SSID as another network. So, for example, let's say I jump on a Southwest Wi-Fi and they have go-go Wi-Fi as their SSID that's broadcasting. So that means when you go to your wireless device and you say, show me wireless networks, it says go-go Wi-Fi.
Right.
I spin up the same exact name network. Now, what will happen is most of the time, let's say I were to try to do this at your house, Carl.
Okay.
And you have a bunch of devices connected to your, let's say it's Carl's Home is the name of the network. It's not, but let's say it is. And I go to your house and I try and spin up an evil twin called Carl's Home. Okay. Most of your devices know that there's a password on that network, a pretty good password on that network, I might add.
Okay.
So those devices are not going to connect to me, right? They're going to say, no, this is a different Carl's home network because it doesn't have a password. But unfortunately, in public places like your Starbucks and your, airlines and that sort of stuff, they don't pass out a password. It's what's known as an open network. There's no password to it.
Right.
So it's real easy for you to spin up an access point looking like that particular Wi-Fi, and whoever's closest to you will connect to you instead because you're broadcasting a stronger signal. And then you can route traffic through and see all the things they go to and all that good stuff. So that's like, this attack. Explain.
It's like when I go to Costco and I give out free samples.
People just take them. That's what they expect there. Yeah.
That's right. I don't poison them, but I could.
So what you do there is, listen, you can spin it up and typically what will happen, and we've seen this every time you go to a hotel or whatever and you connect to the Wi-Fi, there's this thing called a captive portal.
Yes.
The captive portal is it's that web page that pops up. It says, hey, give me your last name and your room number and we'll give you internet. Or
they just say, click here to access the internet.
Yeah.
Thank you for playing. Yeah.
Exactly. Or they'll say, log into your Delta account, right? So that you can get access to
your Chili's rewards number.
Right. Exactly. So here, it's really easy for an attacker to then gather that information. Oh, give us your Delta account, give us your password here, give us whatever, right? And you type it in and you get access to the internet, quote unquote. And all they're doing is routing you through the free internet. So that's what happened here.
So the guy was arrested, as you said before.
Here's the thing I don't understand. Here's going to be a little bit of criminal career advice.
Okay. Should we play the music? Let's go ahead and play the music. Go.
Play the music.
It's criminal career advice.
Okay. First off, if you're going to spin up an evil twin device and you're going to do it in a place that you are a captive audience for a period of time, like an airline when you're at 35,000 feet.
Right.
The only way they're going to pick you out of the crowd, out of the 278 other people on that plane, is if you do it on a second leg.
A second leg.
They don't. Yeah. So imagine you're on a flight and I'm going from New York to Seattle.
Oh.
And I spin up an evil twin. There's 278 other potential people who could have done that. They
Right.
don't have the right technology in an airline to determine what seat number was doing it.
Right. Sure.
So the only way they could have narrowed this down is this clown then went on a different flight. Maybe he had a connecting flight to somewhere else and did it again. And they were like, wow,
Yeah.
we see these signals on two different flights.
And only one person was on both flights.
It was Twain.
Yeah. Hey.
I think it's worse than that. I think he did it on multiple trips.
Oh,
And they're
entirely
like,
possible.
it only happened on trips where you were on the plane.
Yes. But other than that, I can tell you it's not an easy thing to do. And the equipment required to do triangulation of 2.4 gigahertz signals.
Okay.
It's not something you're going to tuck in a pocket.
When you said that, I don't want people to misunderstand. The bad guy, what he did was easy.
Yes.
Finding him was hard unless he's stupid enough to keep doing it.
Absolutely.
You know, if Cliff Stoll was on that flight, we wouldn't have this problem.
So he would have found him with his modem.
Here's the
right.
bad news. Here's the really bad news is that he probably did something weird with the SSID and didn't name it exactly the same.
Maybe
For
not.
the flight attendants to figure out that it was there.
Maybe he named it Bob in seat 32A.
Maybe. But the problem is he aroused the suspicion of a non-technical crowd of flight attendants. And they said, hey, there's something weird going on here. Maybe because they saw two versions of the same name, but most people wouldn't. He probably named it differently or something. The bad news is there could be a lot of people out there doing this, and there probably are a lot of people out there doing
Oh,
this.
absolutely.
So we give the advice, you don't trust these public networks. Now, if you join one of these networks and use a VPN, you're probably okay because all
Yeah.
you're doing is piggybacking through them.
Right.
It's when you trust them that you get betrayed.
A lot of places like grocery stores have their customer Wi-Fi, and the chances are that nobody's going to go into grocery store, go into the bathroom, up into the rafters, and replace the Wi-Fi router, right? So you're probably okay there.
But by that same logic, there's probably not a murderer down that dark alley.
Probably.
So
Maybe.
probably.
All right, the odds are low.
Yes.
They're
Yeah,
non-zero,
agreed.
though.
Yeah, they're not zero.
But I think also a little bit of hygiene with your mobile devices. A lot of us. So it's
You rinsing in water? Is that what you're...
well, actually, honestly, your mobile devices probably should be UV cleaned. I'm sure nobody
That's a
uses them in the
separate-
bathroom,
Yeah.
but that's an entirely different conversation.
Entirely.
It was a
Entirely.
Seinfeld episode about a bathroom book. That book was in the bathroom. You can't return that book.
Yeah. But aside from that, from a cybersecurity standpoint, if you take a look at your phone and you, let's say it's either an iPhone or an Android, whatever, and you go to settings and you go to Wi-Fi, the first question is, when you're not at your house, is your Wi-Fi on?
Right.
Most people don't shut it off when they leave the house.
Yeah.
Right? They just leave it on. Why would I shut it off? It's a pain in the butt to remember to do that. The problem is when you don't shut your Wi-Fi off, most Wi-Fi devices will continue to probe for the networks they know.
Right.
So I might be standing in line at the grocery store and it's probing for my home network. It's like,
Right.
hey, is my home network there? Hey, is my home network there?
And if you decide to go check your bank account at that moment and don't notice that you're connected to Wi-Fi in a
Right.
in a strange place, then you might be going through somebody who's done an evil twin.
But I like Dwayne's suggestion of go ahead and use, Chili's Wi-Fi or whatever with no password, but immediately turn on your VPN.
Yes.
But you were just saying that in between the time that it takes for you to turn on your VPN and the connection, your apps could be going out and saying,
absolutely. Yeah, it's entirely possible that your apps
Your
could go out
location,
and
for
check
example,
something.
your advertising IDs, things like that will
all
ping
right,
out.
I just came up with a new invention, right? And
What's that?
you we'll get a 3D printer, we'll put it together, and we'll sell millions of them. It's a device that it connects to an app on your phone that when you leave the house turns off your Wi-Fi.
There you go.
Geofence Wi-Fi.
But
Yeah,
different
I like
than
it.
geofence. Yeah, geofencing Wi-Fi in the house.
Yeah.
Just turn
You
it
leave
off
and it
when
just
you
shuts
leave the
off.
house.
That's right.
Now,
Well,
now this could be
and turn it
this
back
could
on when you
lead
get
to-
to the office.
this
Right.
could lead to serious hilarity, right? Like if you don't know that your daughter is upstairs in the bedroom with her boyfriend and you leave the house and then they go to get online and nothing works.
Now, I do
There's
know.
a sitcom waiting to happen here.
I know, right? I do know there are some security settings you can set on some mobile devices that do this geofencing for you. It's possible. But just most people don't even go down that path. Or even, let's say you do connect to a Starbucks Wi-Fi or a Chili's Wi-Fi or a grocery store Wi-Fi, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How many of you then go in after you're out
And
of that
forget the network.
location
Mm.
and tell it to forget the network?
Right.
Right?
Mhm.
Go in and say, okay, don't remember Chili's Wi-Fi. Because if you don't do that, if I spin up a Chili's Wi-Fi sitting in a parking lot somewhere way away from Chili's, your phone's going to be like, oh, I must be at Chili's, and it's going to connect.
Yep.
Right? So you definitely want to be careful.
Well, when you connect to a new network, doesn't it say, do you want to reconnect to this automatically? If you just say no, it doesn't forget it. It doesn't have a thing. No?
No. If I were to spin up an open network like that, it's just going to reconnect to it. It's not going to say, hey, I found this network here. Do you want to connect? It's just going to say, oh, you connected before.
I thought when you first connect to a network, I thought it asks you if you want to
When you
remember
first
this
connect.
network.
No.
I
When
think
you first
remember
connect
net-
to a network, you the SSID is there. You click on it. It says, "What's the password?" You type the password. You click, "Okay, it's done." There's no. Do you want to remember?
There's a
no,
setting
can
on
I
the phone
temporarily use
connect
this?
to known endpoints.
Yes.
Automatically, and you can turn that off, but it's awfully inconvenient, isn't it?
I know, which is what makes it secure.
All right. So in terms, if anybody was wondering, that was a joke. There is Wi-Fi geofencing, and it's built into every
Yes.
phone. So
Yes.
all right. Should we move on, or are we done with this one? Just be careful out there, kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's
please don't
if
think-
you're gonna.
Please don't think they've caught the guy. We're all safe. No.
Yeah.
They caught the tip of
We're
the
all the
iceberg.
guy.
Caught a
Oh, wait.
guy.
Yeah, they caught a guy.
A guy.
And the guy, honestly, if he was doing it smart, like I said, it's very hard to
Would be
detect
caught.
this type of thing. Right? Absolutely. There are, I'm sure, plenty of security researchers that have fired up a wireless evil twin just to see what the handshakes look like.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, we know people who've blogged about it.
And we know evil twins. All right. So this next one, Dwayne, you're going to take the lead on this. This is about regression, and regression is spelled with REGRESSH.
Should be called aggression.
Yeah.
I know, right? This one actually. So if we have a serious, father-son chat here on this channel, this is probably the most serious of all of our things today.
So read the headline.
SSH. Yeah, absolutely. So regression with capital SSH is a remote, unauthenticated code execution vulnerability in OpenSSH. So this is probably one of the bigger things that hit the news in the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So SSH is a secure shell. It's a way for you to, in an encrypted way, control remote computers. Right, Linux boxes, Windows boxes now, so on.
It kind of does what SSL or whatever they call it, secure transport layer, the HTTPS does in a browser, but it lets you use your regular other computer applications.
Yeah, and I can do things like I could just get a command prompt on a remote server and reboot services and reboot the computer and that sort of stuff. I could do a tunnel where I tunnel applications through in a secure way to a remote computer. So SSH is super handy, and it's been around forever. However, this particular exploit is pretty gnarly. So the Qualsys Threat Unit, TRU, has discovered a remote unauthenticated code execution vulnerability in OpenSSH server in glibc-based Linux systems. CVE has been assigned. So this is big. If you're running an SSH accessible computer that has OpenSSH or Open Secure Shell on it, you absolutely want to go patch. I think the last numbers right now from Shodan were how many hundreds of thousands of exploitable computers are out there? I think it's like 700,000 exploitable computers right now.
Big number.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is definitely our PSA on this particular podcast is go out and patch your SSH if you're using OpenSSH.
So just so everybody knows, the hacking teams that we run, and Dwayne especially, are giddy when they get an SSH connection because it's the keys to the kingdom. It's basically it's a command line. It's a remote over the internet command line.
That you pass out the champagne and the cigars.
So it's so good.
So
it's the end of the day.
It's a big deal. It's a very big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, only seconded by PowerShell remote session, but SSH
Which is just
still
the Windows version.
Yeah.
Maybe a little evil WinRM sprinkled in there, which is always nice. That's what we should do. We should have a show at some point just talking about all the cool tools you can use to tear apart everything on the internet.
So do we talk about a patch or anything available?
Yeah,
for
there
this?
is a patch. Yeah, absolutely. There's a patch out there. What's interesting about this particular one, and the reason it was called a regression, not because it was actually sounds really cool with SSH, regression, I get it. However, this vulnerability was patched in 2006. And there's a code base that was brought back into some of the more recent versions of OpenSSH that opened it back up again. So yeah, you want to be careful there. Make sure you go out and patch.
Yeah.
Sometimes old bugs refuse to die.
This one came back in 2020. So it was dead for
Frankenstein
14 years and
CVE.
came right on back.
Frankenstein Day itself, yeah. All right, so this one, who wants this one? Millions of cell numbers are stolen after a popular iOS and Android 2FA app is hacked. Is this an authenticator application?
Yes. Yeah. The Twilio's Authy app for both iOS and Android designed to make it easier for users to request 2FA authentication when signing into applications, ironically, has been hacked.
And it's ironic because we've been telling people that this is the most secure way to do 2FA is with an authenticator app. We like this the best. And then boom.
Did we say a good authenticator app?
I was going to say, there are a lot of really good authenticator apps out there, and I'm not. Well, actually, maybe I am picking on this one, but for example, I use Google's. Google has a multi-factor authentication app.
Microsoft has one too.
Google has also probably one of the best cybersecurity teams on the planet.
To quote the Dos Equis, most interesting man in the world, I don't always use applications from billion-dollar companies, but when I use an authenticator, I always choose a billion-dollar company.
When I do. Yeah.
When I do, I use Google. Honestly, I would absolutely suggest making sure you're using. Sometimes I say stay away from the mainstream, right? Because that's going to be the biggest target, right? Oh, if everybody's using WordPress, hint, hint, coming soon. But if everybody's using WordPress, it's a big target. So maybe I don't use WordPress. Maybe I use something else. But in this particular case, if you're doing multi-factor authentication, hang with the herd. Yeah. Because it's probably going to be the more secure application.
Yeah. I mean, there's no guarantees. Security is... That's one of the things a lot of people have trouble grappling with is there's no absolute security. There's no absolute physical security. There's no absolute, insurance. The reason we have insurance is because you can't fully protect against fire and flood and things like that, no matter what you do. And security is the same way. It's numbers of nines protection. And all you can do is try to bring those numbers of nines as far as 99.9999% secure. And most of us aren't even seeing nines right now. We're probably all eights.
Oh yeah.
So I have a story for you guys. Maybe I should save this for the intro next week. But anyway, I went down to, the store Guitar Center?
Yeah.
It's a, retail outlet for musical instruments and DJ lighting and drums and everything. So I go down there just to buy a new guitar pedal. One of my pedals broke, right? And I have a Guitar Center line of credit with them, like a credit card. But I don't have the card. I have the number. And I walk in. I said, I don't have the card. I have the number. Is that okay? Yeah, no problem. We'll get what you want. We get what I want. I go up there. He goes, okay, I need your social security number. And I said, why? He says, that's how we're going to verify your credit card number. I'm like, credit card numbers, you just put them in and they either work or they don't work.
Right.
He goes,
right.
Nope. You gotta, and I need your driver's license. He goes, if you like, you can come around here and put it in yourself. I'm like, I'm not giving you my social security number, fool. So, okay, is this the new normal? Like,
No, this is the new stupid.
Carl, just think what you could have done. Maybe a SQL injection on your social security number field
Yeah, right.
there.
If
You're
he
like,
doesn't
all right,
allow
give
me
me 2
to,
seconds. I'm going to type this in. Your social security number really has a tick in it? It does. Yeah. It's really weird.
Little Bobby Tables.
Little Bobby Tables strikes again.
But it's kind of like places where it's like, you can have a password as long as you want, but the entry field only accepts 10 characters.
Oh, God, don't get me started on this. We talk about this all the time. And you know what? I think we should start a Security This Week Hall of Shame, a password Hall of Shame, where we can put up websites that in apps that have a limit on the number of characters.
Guitar Center is our first candidate for the Hall of Shame.
That's for a different reason, but that's not a password. But I just got a new continuous glucose monitor. I got the one the Hanson has, the Dexcom G7, and I'm setting it up, and I have to create an account. And there's a 20-character limit on the password.
Wow.
As you know, awesome. This is the dumbest thing in the world because the most thing you can do to make your password secure isn't use lowercase, uppercase numbers and special characters.
Yep.
It's length.
Yep.
And people
we hate to admit that, but that's
so we're going to start a Security This Week password Hall of Shame. We're going to put up a website on a page on the website.
Heck yeah.
If you have a site or an app that you want to call out as having bad password requirements, send it to us at Security This WK, or the different ways you can reach us on X, Twitter, and Mastodon and all that.
I'm going to set up a password system that only allows ones.
Yeah, that's it.
As long as you want.
Right.
But it's only ones.
I wonder how hard it would be to have a password system that only accepts white characters. Empty spaces, like tab, space, tab, space, tab. Like, that would be awesome.
That'd be hard.
It would be hard
to capture that kind of
tabs
password.
and 2 spaces.
Is that make it even better? Make it so they can't paste.
And then you make a comment that this is in tribute to our blind users.
Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness.
We're going to get canceled over that one.
Yeah.
All right. Before we take a break, I want to bring up a podcast that I listen to on the radio. It's actually a radio show on public radio, and I put the link.
Things?
I put the link. No, I put the link in the Slack. So if you want to find it, this is the Colin McEnroe Show. Colin McEnroe is a guy on Connecticut Public Radio. He's been on for years, and he's a professor from Yale. He went to Yale and then he's an academic kind of guy, but he's a real down-to-earth dude. So this episode's called The Cars Have Eyes, Data Privacy or Lack Thereof, and Your Vehicle. Ooh. And I was horrified to learn that just in the last 5 years or so, if you buy a new car and you sign all the papers, one of those papers you're signing is a privacy or lack thereof statement that says they can collect whatever data they want from you, however they want from you, and use it however they want.
Ugh.
And now the car manufacturers, they have scales in the seat. They know how much you weigh, what you listen to on the radio. Like, that car is an information gathering machine.
Device.
It's a total surveillance device.
That's awesome and horrifying.
So just the last 5 years or so. And so they have somebody from Mozilla on, and she's amazing. Jen
I wonder if you could
her.
hack that so that you give them false data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should drive from the passenger seat.
Right? I mean, a lot of those sensors aren't hard to fool. And most of it's probably still using CAN communications on the back end. So
there was a story about a woman who got divorced, and she ended up getting the car. And the husband, it was a Mercedes, and the husband had an app that tracked it. And she basically got email or text or something that says, your ex is tracking you. everything that you do and everything that the car is putting out. And she called up Mercedes and they're like, well, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. That's our car, So she took it to a garage and had them disconnect all the computer stuff, which means that GPS no longer worked and all that stuff. But because she was being surveilled by her ex-husband, who was kind of a creep, she had to do this.
That's insane.
Insane. All right, let's take a break. Come back to sanity after these very important messages. Stick around.
No promises.
And we're back. You're listening to Security This Week. I'm Carl Franklin. It's Patrick Hines and Dwayne LaFlotte. And man, it's been a harsh couple of weeks.
I know, right?
What happened with this thing called the blast radius attack?
Blast radius. Okay, I'm super excited about this one.
Oh,
in a couple different ways. Listen,
Never a good
radius.
sign.
All of us grew up seeing radius as like the end all be all sort of remote authentication protocol. It's been around since 1991.
Remote authentication dial-in user service.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you used, first off, dial-in, if you used a modem back in the 90s, and authenticated into your office like the three of us did, you probably hit a radius server, right? And the radius server authenticated you against your Windows NT 351 domain.
Landman.
And then came back and said, you are authorized to, whatever. So it's been around
That's
for
how my
really,
manager talked.
really
Sorry,
long.
I can't do that, Dave.
Okay, you're authorized.
You're authorized.
I'm sorry, Dave. I can't do that.
It wasn't even that sophisticated back then. And apparently it's not now. So radius is still a protocol used to authenticate to VPNs, right? So think the new dial-up, right? I'm remotely connecting from home. I'm just doing it over the internet now. So lots of switches, routers, access points. Most of them understand radius authentication, right? And can authenticate against, an Active Directory domain, Entra ID, whatever it may be. So, all right, still being used today. Radius, blast radius is, there are researchers out there who have said, we've broken it. We've made it so that if you try and log into a radius authenticated VPN device, we can falsify the data to the authentication server, allowing us access as anybody we want. So imagine this. People see this blast radius news article pop up. They realize they're using radius for their enterprise. And in the headline, it says, I can log in as your global admin and do whatever I want.
Wow.
Right? Horrifying. I mean, there are millions of endpoints out there probably using radius.
Yikes.
So, of course, I got excited, right? And was like, yes, let's...
For no particular reason.
Let's see how we can burn the internet to the ground today. And I started digging into this.
Or save the internet.
One or the other.
50-50.
Tomato.
Really? Exactly.
How you feel? How you feeling today? Feel like breaking the internet? I think I'll save it.
Depends. If I'm on X, I usually feel like breaking it.
What's it pay?
You mean rolling on X or actually on the website x.com? Because you don't take me for the ecstasy taking.
Oh my God.
Dwayne.
No, not that.
You go to
X,
raves?
X, the website, Twitter.
Okay.
The tweeter. So what's interesting about this is you start reading into this attack. It says that the remote authentication dial-in service user service protocol or radius protocol, blah, blah, blah. It's been around since 1991. And the radius protocol, the way it works is when I go to log in, the radius server takes my username and password and whatever sort of things I provide it.
Yep.
And then it submits a request to the back-end authentication server.
Okay.
That server, so there's a radius client and a radius server. The radius client's like the VPN server, right? And the radius server is like where you're authenticating. So it takes a request from the client, the VPN server, and it sends it to the actual server. The server then goes, okay, well, are you authenticated or not? And it sends back a packet that says yes or no. You're authenticated or you're not authenticated. That makes sense, right? It's pretty straightforward. All of these packets are MD5. They use an MD5 cipher to encode the data, right? So this is a one-way encryption, if you will, right? I can take a long string of text and I can put it through this cipher and it'll come out as gibberish on the other end.
Yeah.
And you can't get it back to the text. So you say, okay, well, how did they manipulate this particular response? Because what they're saying is the server will come back and say rejected, and we can magically change it to accepted.
Jeez.
Now that sounds really cool. So you keep digging in.
Or horrifying.
Or horrifying. And what they say is, okay.
Got to translate that for the regular listener.
Now let's break this down. I'm an adversary and I'm on the internet. And I go to authenticate into a VPN server that's using Radius.
Yeah.
And I give it a username and a wrong password. I know it's going to come back with a reject, right? That packet goes from the Radius server, Radius client, to the Radius server, right? The server has to then authenticate me and return the rejection packet.
Yeah.
For this to work, when the rejection packet comes back, not only do I also have to be on that side of the network, so I can intercept the packet.
On the server side of the network?
On the server side of the network to intercept the packet. Then I take this packet, which is all an MD5 encoded hash.
Yeah.
And I need to find what's called a collision. So let's break that down.
My eyes are glazing over. Everybody's eyes are glazing over.
Wait, let's break that down. And that's part of this.
All right. Well, just because what you said is not only do you have to, so it seems like this is kind of really difficult to pull off.
Oh my God, it's so hard. So wait, you have to then imagine this. If I take any amount of text I want, I could take the Library of Congress or I could take a small sentence and I MD5 it there. It's always going to come out to the same number of bits. It's always like 32 bytes, right?
Yeah.
But they're different, right? There's enough bits in there to represent every piece of text on the planet uniquely. Well, kind of. When you find a collision, you may be the name Dwayne, MD5 encoded.
Wait a minute. A collision being this unique text has hash A, and this other unique text also results in hash A.
Exactly.
That's a collision.
And you know how rare that is?
Well, it must be impossible.
Let me guess. There's a time limit in how long you have to get to that collision.
So the Radius server.
Okay, this is a Mission Impossible movie waiting to happen right here.
The Radius server only listens for 60 seconds
for
the response. So I need to intercept this packet. I need to discover a collision, a mathematical collision in an almost infinite space.
Jeez.
And then I can supply the right packet to the server so that it will think I'm authenticated. And that usually that collision finding takes hours and hours and hours. And because it's different every time, you can't pre-generate it. You have to wait for the packet to come.
Yeah.
So the researchers said, well, what we were able to do was extend the timeout to longer than a minute. And we speculate if we got a bunch of computers working on this, we could bring it down to about 5 minutes. So let me recap this.
Yeah.
You not only need an attacker on the outside, but you also need an attacker on the inside. And that attacker,
an accomplice,
is going to be holding about 85 GPUs and a crack cluster computer so they can crack this thing in under 5 minutes. But then they're in, right? It's like, slick.
So it sounds like this is what researchers do when they apply for grants for millions of dollars so they can buy tons of crap and do something that proves how hard it is for a particular hack to occur.
So it's impressive. I wouldn't have assumed anybody would try and target an MD5 collision on a authentication response. You just don't have that kind of time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So from a theoretical standpoint, neat, but from a Dwayne thinks it's awesome standpoint, it made me sad.
And this is going to be a bit of a theme today. We're going to talk about the idea of people saying, oh my gosh, this is such a horrible thing. And then we find out a laser will be fired from the moon in a random direction, and make sure you're not looking directly at it at the time it randomly fires, probably out into space.
Are you hinting at the next story part?
I think so.
The last story, not the next
The
story.
last story. Yeah, the last story. All right, well, this is the second to last story. from Bleeping Computer, hackers target WordPress calendar plugin used by 150,000 sites.
Inconceivable.
Inconceivable.
WordPress is the most secure ever. Actually, WordPress isn't usually that bad. WordPress, it's the plugins. It's the plugins that'll get you.
But wait a second. Is it the plugins, or is it that WordPress allows plugins to do everything? That's the problem.
That's
for every plugin that's vulnerable on a given day, there might be half of one that's not. I kid. Okay. I kid because I hate them. No. So I don't know. It's hard to say. It's convenience. It all boils down to convenience. If you could get a platform that did exactly what you needed and only what you needed, it would be more secure. But then we'd need a billion platforms.
Right.
So flexibility is convenient, and convenience breeds insecurity.
Okay, so let's get to the story.
Yeah.
Hackers target WordPress calendar plugin used by 150,000 sites.
Right. So the vulnerability in the modern events calendar, WordPress plugin, 150,000 sites. If we take a look at sort of the breakdown here, and this was found in a bug bounty, so yay, bug bounties.
Good.
But in the report described here, WordFence, says that security issue stems from a lack of file type validation in the plugin's set feature image function used for uploading and setting feature image for events. So I might schedule an event on this calendar plugin, and I can give it a picture, right? So I can upload an image, and there is a bug in the thing that detects the extension of the file that I'm uploading. And I think we had talked about this 2 weeks ago when we were doing, I said we've run into this in customer environments where you can upload files and they're only looking for pictures. Right. Remember we had talked about that split command where it was like just a small one character that caused, disastrous results. So it's not hard.
And guess what? These websites don't have, malware detection built into their upload features. That would be inconvenient.
Right? Well, and how many of these plugins do you think, or these plugin developers, have actual code security reviews done?
Nope. They're just happy the file uploads at all.
Right, exactly.
Success.
They're looking for functionality. Done. Ship it.
Ship it.
Shipping's not only a feature, it's the feature.
The feature. Yes.
Aww. So, here we say, listen, be careful what you put up there, of course. If you're using WordPress, be careful the plugins you use. If it's a reputable plugin that does security audits on their own code, great. If it's not, most of these plugins, you can read the code yourself or have somebody else do it and see if it's something you really have to use. We've had customers do it with us where they say, hey, listen, there's this plugin that was written. It's really fantastic. But we need somebody to look at it and make sure it's secure. Yeah. Right. So we'll take a look at them. But just have somebody you trust take a look at it. And always use a web application firewall. WordFence is fantastic. Cloudflare is fantastic. They're usually pretty good at picking these things up.
All right. And just in case our regular listener thought that this show was already as entertaining as it could possibly get, then along comes this story, which spurned the title of our show, Screw You Guys, I'm Archiving My Repo.
Did you say regular listener in the singular?
Absolutely. I'm just being honest.
Wait, I saw that guy on LinkedIn. Thank you, sir, for listening to our podcast.
All right, so Dev rejects CVE severity, makes his GitHub repo read-only. What happened was somebody... he actually did have a problem with his code, but he says it was just a minor thing. It was fixed immediately, and then all these people started harassing him and hounding him about it.
There's more to it because it started as a 9.8, I think, and it got reduced to a 3.3.
Yeah. And
so we really are seeing a lot of what we've been talking about, which is like what Dwayne just said. Oh my God, this is an amazing problem. And, Radius servers are insecure. And then when you dig into it, it's like, no, this is pretty bogus. This is like, I'd more likely to be, eaten by a shark while on a plane that's crashing.
And it also, again, reinforces our idea that we need 2 CVE severity numbers. We need one for how bad is the damage if the hack happens to you, and the second is how likely are you going to
and it needs to be evaluated by someone other than the person who discovers it.
Yes,
because the person who discovers it does have an interest in hyping it up. They mention in the article that people are looking for they want to have build their resumes that they've I've discovered this level 9. Well, that motivates them to do level 9.
Yes. Yeah,
and that's bogus.
It's interesting you say that because I've definitely seen a shift in the last 3 to 4 years where a lot of security engineers, analysts, researchers, whatever, the comment is always like, well, how many CVEs have you found? Right? Yeah. How many, or, I've found 15 CVEs last year. And you're like, okay, cool. What were those security things you found? And like some of them are getting so goofy. There was a CVE issued for Raspberry Pi, the default install of Raspbian, because the username is Pi and the password is Raspberry. That's the default. So there was a CVE issued because you get root level access to any Raspberry Pi if they didn't change it. So let's
get back to the drama that ensued here. What actually happened here?
So basically, this is a trend that the IP package that this guy did. He basically said, "I can't take this. I'm done. I'm going to set my thing to read only."
Well, hang on. Let me explain what the actual problem was. So the CVE I'm reading right here has to do with the utility that he is developing, not correctly identifying private IP addresses supplied to it in a non-standard format, such as hexadecimal. This would cause the node-IP utility to treat a private IP address in hex format, such as 0x7f dot whatever, which represents 127 dot, as public. And as you know, that 127 dot whatever is not a routable IP address.
Right.
So should an application rely solely on node IP to check if a provided IP address is a public, non-standard, non-standard inputs can cause inconsistent results to be returned by the effective version. So it's kind of a minor thing, really.
Well, if you depend on this thing for the wrong thing.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're depending on this for security.
Yeah.
Well, it's like if I have plastic sheeting and I depend on it as armor for a tank. Yes, it's not good for tank armor.
Yeah.
But if you're using it to keep the water off the tank, it's probably
And the developer of this thing says it's not appropriate for the usage.
Right.
Yeah, so he fixed the bug, and he disputed that the bug constituted an actual vulnerability and that 2 of an elevated severity, and then he just kept getting hammered.
Right.
And so he said, screw you guys, I'm archiving my repo.
Yeah.
And turned it read-only.
Yep.
And how many downloads does this guy get? 17 million, I believe, is what it said. Yeah, 17 million downloads weekly.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So I get it. Like, if I were, a lot of times when I'm trying to trick on a server, you may have a website that a user can view over the internet, and then you might have an administrative website that can only be viewed locally on the computer, right? And that's usually when we start talking about SSRFs and that sort of stuff, where we're tricking the computer into loading up that admin website so we can see it remotely. So I get it. If you can reclassify an IP address, like if in the header of my request to the web server, I could say, no, my source IP is 0x7f, or I'm a proxy for 0x7f.1.
So this is like mark of the web evasion.
I could see it being kind of an important thing, but this guy's like, listen, you shouldn't be using this utility as something that gates users from viewing a website. This is just literally classification of an IP.
So the point of the story is what we were all talking about before we actually explained what was going on here, which is that the CVE system, which was originally designed to help security researchers ethically report vulnerabilities in a project and catalog them after responsible disclosure, has lately attracted a segment of community members filing unverified reports.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
so
that's the problem.
I think, honestly, Wikipedia might have a better system for checks and balances than this does right now.
So if you want to take down your code competition, you can levy a CVE that's a 9.9 or a 10 against them.
It's a denial of service.
And it's effectively a denial of service, yeah.
Yeah, they talk later in the article about it breaking builds because people do NPS to audit, and now your build is broken because you have this CVE, and it's not supposed to be something that everybody can do, and it needs to be peer reviewed. I think we're going to come to a reckoning soon. I hope. I
think stronger than peer review. I think you ought to have a license to be able to issue one,
and it needs to be revoked if you abuse it,
if you misuse it. Yep. So anyway, that's our story. We're sticking with it. You guys got anything else?
No, that's great.
it.
Yeah. All right. I guess we'll see you next week. For
Thanks,
real
guys.
this time.
Yeah, for reals.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.